Municipalities and government departments owe a combined sum of over 50 billion rand to Eskom. This was in one of the President Cyril Ramaphosa's parliamentary responses in the National Assembly yesterday. Ramaphosa says the government has established a multi-disciplinary revenue committee that includes Eskom to address the entity's debt repayment. Ramaphosa revealed that in September, the Department of Public Works paid 575 million rand in municipal services and property rates on behalf of organs of state, and 51 million rand worth of invoices were processed to pay Eskom. He also said the government has committed 100 billion rand for infrastructure projects towards social transformation in the areas of energy, wastewater, treatment plants, transport and digital infrastructure. Phew, we're talking about a lot of money. Advocate Stefanie Fick is the Executive Director and Head of Accountability Division at OUTA, and she joins us now to have a conversation about some of the issues that came out of the Q&A session yesterday. Good to have you, Advocate. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's only a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, I was getting tongue-tied and my mind was sort of getting boggled at the numbers I was just reading there, and that wasn't the only numbers that were thrown about yesterday. But perhaps I can begin by asking you some of your takeouts from the President's responses yesterday.
Well, I would like to say that hopefully there's some good news in there. You know, you've mentioned yet another committee. Yeah, but what we need to see is actually action. We always hear these lovely things and we agree and it's a step in the right direction, but it is time that we see the change that they are talking about. And unfortunately, those numbers, those zeros, I do not think we actually have an idea how much money that is. And just think about it. I think we lost the same amount during the state capture era. So, you know, there's a lot of catching up to do, but we need to start doing it because people are suffering on the ground. You know, I say we talk again about load shedding and people complaining about load shedding. There are people that still do not have electricity, that do not have clean water or access to sanitation, water and sanitation. So everything the president has said is obviously good ideas. But sometimes I'm sometimes missing the implementation. How are we going to make sure that, you know, the good stuff are actually implemented?
You know, if we look at a couple of the questions that were thrown about, there was one yesterday that asked what mitigating alternatives are in place for the public who don't have alternative means of power. I mean, not to mention those that don't have power, as you mentioned, but you don't have the money to go and fork out hundreds of thousands of rands to put in alternative energy in your own home, which Ramaphosa didn't answer. And it was a telling moment when you consider that MPs who earn have a backup of generators bought by the government.
Exactly, and that's why there was such an outcry. And I, you know, one listened to him saying that he withdrew that, and some independent body should have a look at all these perks, and that it should be fair to the public and to MPs. But yes, I think that was a question we didn't really get an answer to. We must. I think the problem is so multi-pronged. There's not just one solution to the problem. I think part of the solution is, or part of the problem, and we need to find a solution, is local government. You know, local government gets money for free basic electricity, so that speaks to, you know, giving electricity where it's needed. But Eskom needs to be fixed. And, you know, Eskom is a monopoly. It's the only SOE that is generating electricity. But, you know, the infrastructure is old. We are, you know, listening to moving into green energy, but we need to start doing it. Otherwise, you know, we're not gonna find solutions. But I think the tragedy is that there is no answer. And government really needs to go back to the drawing table. I think, you know, getting money into the fiscus is one thing, but how we spend the money is something else. So I like to get back to we also need to plug the holes where corruption is ensuring that our funds are leaking. Because if you have more funds in the fiscus, then maybe there's an answer to all these sticky questions about, where am I going to get my electricity during load shedding? And it's a call from just normal people that we need to start answering.
Yeah, and it really is, because it's gotten to a point where South Africans are beyond frustrated. I mean, we were just sitting around at a dinner table last night, and everybody was comparing their electricity accounts and saying, have you noticed a drop in your electricity since we've had load shedding? That, suddenly you don't get electricity for sometimes 8 hours to 12 hours a day. And the question was asked, have you noticed a drop? Are you being billed less? Every single person said, absolutely not. In fact, I seem to be paying more. So try and help me understand that. I mean, was that even brought up? Is that you are paying an entity for a service that we're not getting. And in fact, it's getting more and more expensive to pay this entity that's not giving anything back to us.
Yeah, it's unbelievably frustrating. I give kudos to South Africans, because I think despite all of that, we are still hopeful, and we get up and we smile, and we are a very resilient nation. But yes, why most probably your account went up is because the price of electricity went up. I think if you compare your bill now to make it 1.5 years ago, you don't even have to go into old history, you will see that your electricity bill increased phenomenally. And then you sit with, you don't get services. But we need to find solutions, and because it's easy to complain, but we need to find solutions. And I think the solutions, firstly, is in local government. I think our local government needs to think about alternative electricity generation. I think NERSA, who is the body that looks after electricity and electricity generation, needs to open up the regulatory environment to make it possible for people to become independent power producers. And in that, I think one has to think about independent power producers who's got the ability to produce power, that can share that in circumstances where people cannot afford it. Communities where there's either no electricity or a shortage of electricity. And giving the opportunity to communities to I think, look after themselves, but then also look after communities that cannot afford it. And I think that the answer lies there. We need to take hands, come to the table, and come up with solutions in order to assist government. Because if you're going to sit back, only complain and expect government to come up with all the solutions, it is not going to happen. That's what I'm saying. As a nation, I think we're very resilient, and we tend to complain a lot. But I think if we put our heads together, we will find solutions. It's probably going to become worse before it becomes better. But it is time that we get our hands dirty. Assist government, come up with solutions, and fix this problem.
Yeah, perhaps we complain a lot, but not in the right platforms. I mean, we're famous for taking to social media and talking about our complaints, exactly. and that is not good enough. Because, let's take this, what happened this week, and we were talking about it as well. The question about Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's statement that the government must take over the 5 billion rand of Soweto's electricity debt. Ramaphosa's response that Panyaza's statement is an aspirational wish, but South Africans must pay for services. So the president, although he understands people are under immense pressure, the reality is that we can't just write this off, because the entity is struggling, and if we don't pay for the services, what is going to happen?
Exactly, but maybe I should put this. To a degree, I agree with the president. If you use electricity, you should pay for it. But I also agree with Lesufi, and here's why: is that in the local governments do not pay over their electricity bill. So local government is supposed to ensure that the people using the electricity should pay for it, and they should do debt collecting. But that being said, I've referred to free basic electricity previously. Local government gets allocations, for example, free basic electricity. And if you go look at the finances of local government, what do they use these allocations for? And they still owe Eskom an enormous amount of money. So I think there's a reasonable solution somewhere in there. And I actually want to, if the Premier has got a solution and he can fix local government, that local government can pay their bills, but also give the services that they agree. In other words, we again need to go look at how do we spend our money, making sure that the right people are in the right positions, that our tender processes are open and transparent, that we do not waste money on corruption. Maybe they can take over the debt of Eskom, actually get some of that debt back from the people that can afford it, and actually give electricity and services to everybody staying in the municipality.
I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I mean, I suppose it's an aspirational view, but I don't know how that issue is going to work. But I want to move on to another issue, because Ramaphosa has also spoken about the new board and the skills. So he has said that the new board has skills. I think it was EFF's Julius Malema that was asking the question about the stability of Andre de Ruyter as well, and it seemed that the president is still very comfortable in the leadership of Andre de Ruyter. So he's saying this new board's got the skills, it's got the expertise, it's got the experience, must be given space to address areas of weakness and improve efficiency at Eskom. What are your thoughts? Because some of the commentators have been saying that this board doesn't necessarily have the experience and expertise to fight and fix up the specific challenges facing Eskom. I mean, we saw, and I'm not blaming it on the board, but, what people are blaming is poor management at what just happened at Kusile, and the fact that that should never have happened, the whole build-up of ash that caused this whole thing to completely break now, this chimney. And now we have got weeks and weeks again where we no doubt will have load shedding due to that breakdown at Kusile.
Yeah, and it's us on the ground that is suffering. It is not it's not the MPs and it's not the ministers who's got their generators and their electricity bills are paid. It's ordinary citizens that's getting the brunt of all of this. Maybe I'm too hopeful, because but hopefully this board has got the skill and that they will hold the management to account. What we need in Eskom is, I think, less political interference, and let the people do what they are supposed to do. They have an enormous job. To fix state capture, to fix the problems at Kusile and Madupi is enormous. Now, whether the current management is up to it, I don't know. That's why the board should hold to account. If they cannot manage Eskom properly, they should get rid of them by all means. But Eskom has also gone through so many management and CEOs and all that. There is no stability. So, on the one hand, I want to say, give the people a chance. Let's see if they can show us. Because this may sound stupid, but the proof is in the pudding. I think we should really stop complaining and talking and give them an opportunity. How long, though? Because our patients are running thin. Let's give the board an opportunity, because every time you change a board, you change management, they have to catch up. It is we did keep some of the board members, so there is a bit of continuity, but sure, we need to give them a chance, and they need to grab the bull by the horns and realize that South Africa is really running out of patience, and they need to show us that they can fix this problem. Otherwise, they need to go, and we need to get people with experience in there in order to fix this problem.
Well, I know, and also the president saying that he needs to properly have a body to assess de Ruyter and his manager's performances. So yet another thing to be set up. The other issue that was brought up, and we don't have time to talk about it now, it's the whole issue about salaries. Ramaphosa spoke of salaries of ministers and says they're determined by an independent body. Ramaphosa said, and he withdrew the ministerial handbook to have the matter properly examined and processed. Just very very quickly, would you say that is the real reason, considering that the withdrawal actually followed a detailed media report that exposed contents of that ministerial handbook that he signed, which attracted a lot of backlash from the public? As a person who signed on the ministerial handbook, how come he didn't find it imperative at the time of signing to properly examine the implications of its contents?
Exactly. It really seems like a disconnect between, what is fair for ministers and MPs and what is reasonable to the public. I think it is not just the salaries; it's the amount of ministers, and the same with the government salary bill. It is not necessarily the big salaries. It is the fact that we have our salary bill is so big. So we really need to look at it. And perks, in the current economic situation we find ourselves, you know what, if you don't have money, you don't spend money on luxuries. And I think it should be applicable to each and every person in South Africa. Ministers are there to look after our best interests. They do not necessarily have to have all the perks if people on the ground are struggling to survive.
Indeed.
And not, spending money on perks.
We'll have to leave it there. Advocate Stefanie Fick, thanks for talking to us, Executive Director and heads up OUTA's Accountability Division.